Hi, Krishna, everyone. This is acyuta-bhava. Another great question that came in after a recent video that I did on reincarnation and karma on my main astrology channel. Someone asked this question. I just watched part 4 of what ancient astrologers believed about reincarnation and karma. My question is, if someone is reincarnated as a dog, for example, what do they have to do to be reincarnated back into a human? Animals do not have a sense of self. They operate on instinct. Can they even consciously decide to act differently in order to be reincarnated as a human again? Thanks for any light you can shed on this, or if you can suggest something I can read, thank you. So, um, really deep question. I can only respond on the level of my, it's not like I have any like real, I can repeat what I've learned from my teachers and from the Shastras and so forth. So, first of all, animals do have an indwelling soul. So, it's not that animals are without souls within the bhakti paradigm. And not that animals aren't oftentimes intelligent and aware that they are a spirit soul within an animal body. There are examples of this in the Shastras where, you know, um, you have a great sage that is reborn as a deer, and as part of his karma is burning off, and he knows while he's in the body of a deer that you know he's able to remember his previous lives and understand why he had taken the body of a deer. So it's not to say that there's no self-awareness in animals either. There could be, but what we're saying is that their kshetra, their field of activities, is more hardly wired and determined by instinct. So by the laws of nature, there's not as much flexum or freedom or ability outside of that. The human birth is thought of as very unique because while we have that instinctual nature that we're bound by, there is greater faculty for self-reflection, self-awareness, spiritual life. The human form of life is designed to be a stepping stone for evolution spiritually. So that's the premise. And remember that as a result of that, we don't look down on animals. We just see their karmic situation as different, and we see animals as all being having the animal body is still home to an indwelling spirit soul, which is why we don't, we're pacifists and treat all animals and plants and every living creature with respect. And vegetarianism is also about trying to minimize the amount of harm that we're doing in this world. It's like it's tooth and nail, it's dog eat dog. So you can't live in this world without eating something. But we're trying to minimize the amount of suffering involved with that. And plants are thought to be like, for example, you can take plants and it doesn't kill the whole plant to take fruits. Or there's so many instances where you don't have to totally kill a plant in order to eat and thrive off from what a plant grows. So the plants are thought of as not perfect, but a lesser, like a more passive, they're more in line with a pacifist lifestyle and a respect and appreciation for the spirit soul indwelling in all things. So it's not about saying animals are bad or degraded or something, but they're more bound by instinct and nature. So that's the first part about that, is just to kind of tweak that to say, in animals, there are instances where we can think of animals as even being aware that I'm a spirit soul in an animal body. So, and God actually shows up in animal avatar forms. God shows up as a turtle or as a boar, or so there's many instances or as a great fish. There's many instances in which God comes into the different species of life and takes shape as well throughout the scriptures. So just to really make sure we're broadening it, because sometimes it can almost sound like the karma and transmigration of the soul can almost sound like it's inimical towards animal form of life. But we are not bound by the same things. Like my dog is much more bound by her instincts to eat, mate, sleep, defend. Right? She likes to play too. She's very sweet, cuddly. There's emotion there too. So we're not trying to say that there's none of that either. But okay, so the human form of life is unique for this reason. Now, someone will say and one of the interesting things we say is that animals are not, this comes from again, from my teachers and my teachers' teachers. is that, animals are not like held accountable for eating or killing to survive, and they're not. It's because there's not really a choice. They're more bound by instinct. So um they're not like accruing karma for the choices that they make in the same way that a human is. So then one might say, well, then if you transmigrate into an animal form of life and you don't have a lot of choice, then how could you become human again? How do you make some choice to become human again? And the way I understand it is like this, that it's kind of like a slipstream. When you abuse the human form of life, you're basically going to be free falling through a chain of different lifetimes that are more or less governed by different kinds of natural energies that are expressing themselves in forms of life, most of which are um, depersonalizing and very tooth and nail. I mean, look at nature, right? Look at the way that nature is and consider what's unique about the human form of life, and then consider how much more bound by instinct and the laws of survival and things like that. I mean, if you don't, if you haven't had that experience, just watch the Nature Channel. Or, I remember one of the first times it really struck me that nature was pretty, intense, was when I was in the Amazon drinking ayahuasca for the first time. So when a soul transmigrates out of the human form of life, and let's say part of their karmic journey is going to be to fall back into many, perhaps successions of lifetimes in animal forms of life, it's a bit like what the soul is getting to do is experience that conditioning of those instincts and those desires and drives and impulses that have not yet been mastered or set aside for something higher, that you're going to go through, you're going to fall into the slipstream of all these different species of life until that energy has, in a sense, burnt itself off. And it does so naturally. And at some point in that process, you will once again receive an opportunity to come into a form of life that has more choice, that has more facility to be self-aware. And then one takes advantage of that, and the progression continues. And this process is infinite. It has no beginning and no ending. And there's always going to be recurring possibilities for souls to take births that facilitate choice, that facilitate self-reflection. So it comes around again. One way of thinking about it would be like this. Let's just say that your basic instinct is to get ahead in life at the cost of everybody else. And you make all kinds of choices to hurt or harm other people in the name of getting ahead. And there's no spiritual life. There's no deeper questioning, from start to finish. It's just purely greed, fame, self-indulgence, envy, lust. And you're just driven by those things, self-interest. You hurt other people, blah, blah, blah. Now, I'm just imagining this. I don't make the rules, right? So, but let's just say that that's your life. You have squandered the human form of life according to the Bhakti scriptures. You've lost the opportunity. That doesn't mean that you're damned. It doesn't mean you go to hell somewhere or something like that, or that some punishment awaits you. It just means that, okay, let's just say upon leaving the body, where do you go? Well, if you lost track of the fact that you're a spirit soul connected to God, and you didn't take advantage of this opportunity, even though throughout that lifetime, there would have been people, relationships, family members, co-workers, lovers knocking on the door being like, hey, where's your conscience? Or there would have been so many opportunities, right? You ignored them. Then it's as though you leave this lifetime and you're just going to go down a water slide and land in some forms of life where those exact same instincts are going to be played out without the opportunity for self-reflection. Maybe you're born as a tiger. Then after that, you're born as the prey of a tiger. Then after that, you're born as, this kind of, so you just, that natural energy that you've embodied, that you've associated with it, that samskara in the soul is basically just going to play out for a while. And you're going to have to go through it until you end up on the side of it that perhaps is hurt or damaged by it, or where there's some opportunity for there to be a level of self-reflection about this. And that could play out that in the Shastras, they say, and I don't know where this number comes from, they say there's 8,400,000 species of life in the cosmos, and that the soul will, just move through this slipstream of all of these forms. And that, especially when it comes into a form of life where there is more choice, there are more self-conscious opportunities, or opportunities for self-consciousness. And then if one takes advantage of them, then one gets more human births, or more births that are, let's just say, conducive to spiritual growth. And that's it. And there's a lot of grace along the way. In fact, there's grace built into the whole process. Even if, let's say, you were just to live in base ignorance and really be no different from an animal, in the sense of just being totally dominated by the instinct to, hunt, mate, sleep, defend, all that kind of stuff, then again, you might fall into the slipstream of all different kinds of forms of life that are more or less bound by the laws of nature, harder to have free will within, in a sense. But that there will be more graceful opportunities. There will be more opportunities, because the universe is a constant balancing act, and more opportunities arise. And the greatest good fortune that we have in this lifetime, from this perspective, is to hear about spiritual topics, and to take them into our ears, and to take spiritual practices into our lives. Because when we do that, it's all the Shastras say, it's pretty much a guarantee that you're not going to fall back into that unconscious slipstream where you go through all of these forms of life that are relatively more unconscious and just bound by the laws of nature to a greater extent. Now, remember, that does not mean that the human form of life is the only valuable one. It's just a warning. It's just saying, look at nature, look at how much less freedom and self-consciousness exists in nature than in the form that you're in right now. Take advantage of it. All spiritual traditions that I can think of, from Buddhism, Hinduism, that have embraced transmigration of the soul, teach us, as the Dalai Lama says, it's unique to take on a human life as if you're coming up through in the middle of an ocean and coming up right through a life preserver. So you can think about it that way. One time I was in the Amazon in an ayahuasca ceremony, and I had almost like a transmigration of the soul visionary experience. I was eaten by like a cat, like a large cat in the jungle. And I don't know what kind it was or whatever, but it was in this vision, and I was eaten by it. Right. And then I went through the body of the cat and came out, in the cat's waist, and went into the earth, and helped fertilize a seed, and went up into a tree, and went out through the rain. And it was just this epic like vision of watching how the spirit soul will migrate through all of these different forms and just get caught up in the slipstream. Well, if you're not living a conscious life, the point is that you're going to get recycled in the samsara of the universe in ways that you really have no control over. Because if you don't exhibit control, then you don't have control in where the soul flows. And none of it's bad. None of it's bad, but there are certain forms that you'll end up in from time to time, where suddenly you're sitting in the forest somewhere, and you're able to recognize all of it, and you're able to go, why am I here? Who am I? Those forms of life are so unique and precious. And so we have to take advantage of them. That's the kind of the bottom line of it. So I hope I've explained this well. And also remember again that every form of animal life is also a teacher. There are so many instances throughout the scriptures that talk about animal forms of life acting as gurus or mentors to human beings. Take the advice for how this animal lives and what this animal does. So animals are also full of wisdom. And it's a balance between, you also want to be really realistic about what nature is, and the laws of nature, and the tooth and nail of it, and what a unique gift it is to be self-conscious, right? So anyway, so that's the idea. And sometimes I'll just, before I end, I'll argue on the opposite note that there are many times where, animals will teach us what a blessing it is to be almost at peace with the flow of nature, rather than trying to control it or something like that. But even then, we're talking about animals in a sense as teaching us the value of meditation. Stop running around trying to conquer the world. Stop running around ravaging nature. Stop, sit at peace with it. So animals can teach us that too. So, it's kind of it's a fine line. I'm not going to make my dog into the Dalai Lama, but I'm also not going to say that my dog is some kind of degraded species. So that's the fine line we have to walk with how we see the animal forms of life in relation to our own, into this kind of web of incarnations and the opportunities they provide us. That's my best understanding of it yet. This is actually the first time I've ever tried to articulate it. So my Bhakta friends out there who might listen to this, please feel free to, chime in and help people understand if I'm not, if I'm missing something. Okay, that's what I've got for today. Take it easy, everyone. Hare Krishna.